Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we are going to talk about traumatic loss, and we've got a great person on who's been through loss and is doing coaching work and has some interesting models and themes that she's got. So we're excited about the show. Would you like to introduce her, Heidi?
Sure, Mom. Caro Brookings is joining us from Canada. And as you said, we will be talking about healing after traumatic loss. And after Caro's mom took her life, she realized there isn't enough support for suicide loss survivors. Caro struggled with guilt and was finally able to start healing when she learned how to rewire the brain. Caro has used brain-based methods to help others and is a suicide bereavement coach. Welcome to the show, Caro.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How long has it been since your mama died?
It'll be 10 years in November, so 2013.
10 years, wow, yeah. We always miss them.
Yeah, for sure.
You had a lot of feelings of guilt, and we just know that a lot of people who have a suicide loss, wow, they have a lot of guilt, don't they, Heidi?
Well, absolutely, like guilt and regret, and we should have, could have, would have, hindsight is 20/20 for all losses. And I think suicide gets complicated. So it's been interesting looking at your journey, Caro, and what has helped you. And we're fascinated to learn more about it.
For me, it took a while even to find those methodologies, strategies that work. So like I said, I lost my mom in 2013. I was in my last year of uni, was worried about my dad, what's going to become of him. But other than that, for a while, I just tried to get through the days, and even though the guilt and the shouldas, couldas, they took on all of my focus, but I didn't really know what to do, and I didn't have the energy to do it.
So you were in university when your mother died?
Yeah, I was in my last year of uni. Yeah,
I was at university in the United States when my brother died. And it is very difficult because when you're a college student, I'm guessing this was your case too. None of my friends had these kind of losses. None of my friends had lost a brother traumatically. My brother died in a very traumatic accident. I'm guessing for you, probably none of your friends most of them probably still had mothers and didn't even, know how to support you. I'm guessing you must have felt fairly alone. And like you said, then you have to focus on school. So it's a weird time in your life to have a traumatic loss.
And then you were about your dad, which is another thing, parent loss. So sometimes the kids don't get to grieve because they're so worried about their surviving parent.
Yeah, exactly. So my friends, they only really supported me with the subjects that we were studying more than anything else. And I was on the phone to my dad every night, supporting him the best I could.
Yeah. Wow.
And Caro, do you feel like suicide is a stigmatized loss?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
And was it difficult for you? Did people ask you how your mother died? And if so, because they definitely asked me how my brother died, because people were curious. Mm-hmm. If so, was it hard for you to talk about it, or how did you respond to those kind of questions?
Yeah, so some people did ask, and I would tell them, but I couldn't talk about it without crying, right? So I would always be crying as I was sharing, but some people didn't ask. So for example, when I started my graduate job, people knew that my mom had died, but most of them didn't know how or why, and they never asked. So I just carry that with me. And then you get those throwaway comments like, oh, don't stay late killing yourself. That really, hits home hard, but to his defense, he didn't know, but that's another complexity.
How did you get into talking about it? Was it hard for you?
Yeah, so at that time, I really only talked about it with close friends and family. I didn't really want to talk about it. And then after a while, I sort of realized that, to end the stigma, to break the silence, we need to talk about it. And when they're given the opportunity, then they're more willing and able to open up. So one of my former bosses and my hairdresser, whom I'd known for over 5 years at that time, they both lost someone to suicide, and I never knew until it came up in conversation. That was a few years down the line, and they opened up. And I think it's like that for a lot of us. We probably all know someone, but they're just not comfortable talking about it.
Carol, I think that's a really important point. Like you said, once you open up and tell people, you find that other people have had similar experiences with suicide, but they're just not saying it because they're waiting, because no one else is. So you're making it okay to talk openly about these things and not have it as stigmatized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So that was sort of my first steps. And then the next big point in my life was when our first daughter was born. That was in 2018. And now it wasn't just me and my husband anymore. We had this beautiful baby girl. And that was really when I thought, okay, something needs to change, because even though my mum wasn't diagnosed with any mental health issues as far as we're aware, her mum suffered from depression, severe depression, was treated in and out of hospital. So you sort of follow the family line of females in the family, and I didn't want that for my daughter. So that's when I really started looking into the different strategies.
Not having your mom there, and here you have this wonderful little girl, did it create depression, or not having her, did it bring up the loss even more, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I wasn't depressed as such, but it certainly brought up the loss. But even before my daughter was born, so, during pregnancy, I wanted to ask my mom, what was it like to be pregnant with me? Have you experienced this and that I'm experiencing? I was 23 and a half when my mom died. So at that time, I wasn't, having those conversations with her, because that was a few years off for me. So it definitely brought up that loss, and thinking, what would she be doing now, and all of the things that she's missing out on.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point you wanted to start healing by learning how to rewire the brain. Is that right?
Yeah, so I wanted to start healing. And what I did was, when we sat there feeding the baby all day long, I thought, okay, I'm going to start researching. And there's lots of different possible strategies out there, but there wasn't anything that resonated with me. I was looking for quite some time, and it was either something that worked for one person but then didn't work for me, or it felt like it was just made up out of thin air, until I found out how to rewire the brain. So how to refute our untrue and unhelpful thoughts. First we need to recognize, and then we can refute them, and basically rewire the brain. And it really resonated with me because it's all brain-based and science-backed, which means
you're a math major, right?
Yeah, exactly. So so that helped as well. Yeah, so brain-based science-backed works for everyone every time. I thought, this is great. So I took myself through that process, and it changed my life. I was able to let go of my guilt. I was able to focus again, be present.
Is there anything that I can do right now from my own home to rewire my brain?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a whole process that people can go through. I'll give a high level overview. So the first step is to start really paying attention to our thoughts, because most people walk around, they think they're thinking conscious thoughts, but they're not really, because about 90% of what we do is driven by our subconscious, not our conscious thoughts.
So true.
So start paying attention to those negative thoughts, like, oh, I'm a terrible person, I should have known, I should have been able to stop them, all those kinds of things. Just start being aware of them, because that's always the first step. If you're not aware, you can't do anything about it. The second step is to write them down with pen and paper. So I always encourage people to take pen and paper with them everywhere they go, at least to start with, so we can really write it down word for word and we don't forget at the end of the day. The other reason we write them down is that we want to keep a tally, so we can see how many times that thoughts come up, because they come up more than once for sure. And you probably want to start with the one that comes up the most. So we've got a list of thoughts. The next stage is called the refute stage. And there's two versions of the refute, and we do both of them. The first part is the logical refute, where we logically challenge the thought, logically why it's not true. So for example, you say, oh, I'm the worst parent in the world. And well, maybe you've got a surviving child, you brought your children up the same, and your surviving child is doing great. So that's an example of a logical refute, a logical challenge. So write all of them down, anything that comes up. And then we've got the mirror refute, which is so powerful. And I love that exercise, because we're always so compassionate towards other people, but towards ourselves, we don't have any self-compassion. So with the mirroring exercise, we're bringing up that self-compassion. So what we want to do is we want to mirror it on the person we love the most. So I say, if you can, it's most powerful to mirror it on the person who took their life, if it makes sense in the context.
Okay.
It's the most powerful way to do it, but it can also be quite stressful. So if people find it's too stressful, they can mirror it on someone who's still alive, and it still works fine. So say you've lost your child and you're still with your spouse, and you get on really well, then you could mirror it on them. So you could say, and you say it out loud, but not to them. But I would say to my clients, okay, now mirror it on your husband, for example. And they would need to say, well, so-and-so, whatever the child is called, suicide is all my husband's fault, obviously putting in the names. And the interesting thing is that most people, they refuse to even say that out loud. I say, no, I can't say it. It's not true. Yet they say it to themselves all day long.
They say it's my fault. I should have known.
Yeah.
I should have stopped it. I should have done something.
And then what happens is, because we love them so much, we come up with all of these reasons of why it's not true for them. So for example, it's like, oh no, he took him to hockey every weekend, or you always had a talk in the evening, whatever it is. And we look at them and we find out what's true for us as well. And then write that about us. So if it's like, my husband had a talk with my son every night. If you did that as well, then you would say, okay, I had a talk with my son every night. So you come up with the logical reasons and then the mirrored reasons, all written about yourself.
All right.
And then what you do is you get out your voice recorder on the phone and you read them all out loud. And then you listen to them first thing in the morning, before you get up, because it sets you up really well for the day. And last thing at night, just before you go to sleep, because the subconscious is always active. So it has those positive thoughts to work through. So that's a very brief overview of how it works.
Right. What piece of that helped you personally the most?
The mirror refute helped me the most, for sure, because I was beating myself up about all of these things, the should haves and could have. My mum came to see me for 2 weeks, 2 months before she took her life. So my should haves and could haves were around, picking up on those flags, which were so obvious after she died. She went into her room every evening and didn't spend time with us in the evenings, or she told me a lot about her mum's depression, and I didn't put two and two together. And then she said once, sometimes I wonder why I bother even get out of bed in the morning. And I just thought, yeah, sometimes I'd rather stay in bed. And that was it for me. It wasn't like, okay, there's more to it. So I wish I had picked her up on those things.
Understandable. Now I'm, because I'm the empathic, I can be from the outside, understandable that you would have that conversation of, yeah, sometimes I feel the same way. But it sounds like you were really beating yourself up about these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
Sure.
I hear so many people, particularly if family members are living with him at the time, and I hear them say, but they were so much cheerier right before. And one thing we know as professionals is that we hear that so much, and it's because people have a plan now. So that really they're feeling better because they have a plan. They're, they don't need to be in this painful world of theirs. They've figured out how to get out of their pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really tough that, why didn't I see it? I mean, really tough. So what would you say? What did you say to yourself that brought it back around for you?
Well, I said to myself, I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. That was a big realization for me. And as I learned about the brain and the thoughts, that sort of became apparent, because what you need to remember is that at the time when these things happen, we don't have that information that they're about to take their lives. So now, once they have taken their lives, it's like we've got a new pair of glasses. And when we look into the past, we see everything differently, but now it's too late to do anything. So that was a way where I was able to give myself compassion, because, of course, if I had known, then I would have done things differently.
Compassion, so important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to tell people how they can get a hold of you and what you're doing.
Yeah, so I've got lots of different things going on. I've got my next interview series coming up. People will be able to register from October 23rd. The interview series runs from November 6th to November 10th, and it's completely free. And there'll be different speakers speaking each day. I also have a free private Facebook group. We've got nearly 900 people in there, and I'm in there a lot with advice and journal prompts, things to think about, so we can actually move forward and heal. I also work with one-on-one clients. I've got group coaching clients, a self-study course. So there's something out there for everyone. If they can go to my website, which is carobrookings.com, and they can also have a look on Facebook for the Facebook group, which is called Healing After Suicide Loss.
Oh, great. Well, thank you, Caro, so much for being on the show and for all the good and help that you're giving people.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Caro, for helping so many people find hope after traumatic sudden deaths.
And thanks everybody for joining us on this show today. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.